Good morning, it's Liz at Derma Lessons, and today I am going to show you with some balloons how my fat melting machine works, how the 3D lipo works. So we're all born with fat cells. We all have hundreds of thousands of fat cells when we're born, and as we grow older we get more and more and more fat cells. Okay, so here's an example of some fat cells that we have. All right, we're covered with them. So when you eat, you put your food in and that makes energy. So if your energy out, exercising and activity, exceeds the energy in, then all the fats in your cells are going to get used up for energy, and you're not going to be putting on any weight. Okay, now if the energy that we put into our body isn't all used up for activities and stuff, then we start to put on weight. And I will show you with this balloon. So this is my fat cell. And this is some excess energy being stored in the fat cell. So you can see it starts to get bigger. And a little bit more bigger. Again, if the energy that we're putting in is not being used, it's now being stored inside our fat cells, and it's causing our fat cells to swell. And they get bigger up to 4 times their original size. So here's our fat cell. Let me just tie it up. It's got up to 4 times its original size, with excess energy, excess food that hasn't been used up, hasn't been burnt up, so we're storing it now in our fat cells. So here it is, 4 times its original size. And when it gets to 4 times its original size, it multiplies. So it splits off and makes another fat cell. And again, what happens to this one is, if we're not using up all the energy that we're putting in, fat starts to get stored in this and it gets bigger. And it gets bigger. And it gets bigger. And it gets bigger. Until it's 4 times its original size. And again, we're not using up that energy, and the fat cells got bigger and bigger and bigger. Once it's 4 times its original size, it multiplies. So you can see what we started was one little fat cell like this, and now we've got 2 big fat cells. And again, this one has split, and this one, again, if we're not going to be using up our energy, is going to begin to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you can see that we're laying down quite a lot of big fat cells now, and they're just growing and growing and growing. And it carries on doing this. It carries on multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. And we can start to see that we're getting bigger. Our cells, our tummies are getting bigger, our circumference are getting bigger, because we have all these large splitting, dividing, multiplying fat cells. And there's another one brought into play. So if we start to use up our energy, and we start to diet, we start to exercise, we start to lose our circumference, what happens is that these fat cells begin to shrink down, okay? And they start to get smaller. My fat cells are all over the place, and smaller and smaller, until they're back to a usual size fat cell. So there they are. And that's absolutely brilliant, okay? But they're still there. All these multiplied fat cells that we had are still there, laying in waiting. And then what happens? If maybe we stop dieting, or we fall off the wagon, or we're not quite so careful, or we're not using up all the energy again that we're putting in, what happens is, again, these dormant fat cells that are there, the ones that had divided, that are there, in higher quantities start to grow again and again and again. And we put our weight back on and we put our inches back on. So how does our 3D lipo work? Well, the way that our 3D lipo works is that it actually melts these fat cells and they are gone forever. So unlike dieting, where the fat cells are still there, they're there, but they've shrunk, they're back to normal fat cell size, but they're still there, they're laying in waiting. What happens with the 3D lipo, when we use our fat melting elements, is that they totally and utterly destroy those fat cells. They are gone. And they work at down to 15 millimeters each time you cavitate. So the top 1.5 centimeters of your fat cells are gone forever. And unless you start following maybe a poor diet again, low exercise, and you start laying down more new fat cells that have the potential to divide, these fat cells that have gone will never come back. And that is how the 3D lipo works with inch loss. We actually destroy those fat cells, not shrink them, and they are gone forever. Anyway, I hope you found this useful. Scared the life out of my dogs popping the balloons, and feel free to get in touch with me at Dermalescence Clinic and we can get you booked in for your consultation to begin your journey to body confidence. Okay, bye chaps.